If you suffer from panic attacks and you're afraid of getting one of those during exercise, this video is for you. Because here we're going to talk about what are the benefits of exercise for people who do experience panic attacks. We're going to talk about the causes of panic attacks as well as the prevalence. How often does it happen? And most importantly, probably the reason why you're watching this video is what are the solutions to it? And I have a few of those for you. Before we start, my name is Igor. I am an author of the book, The Mental Health Prescription, as well as I run a personal training company specifically for people with mental health issues. So let's get started. What are the benefits of exercise for people with anxiety or people with panic attacks? One is they have better sleep, 2, less stress, and 3, fewer heart palpitations. All good things, but it can also be a double-edged sword. In some people, a small set of the population, it can actually trigger a panic attack. Now, what's the prevalence of panic attacks for people with anxiety? Well, in one study, what researchers did is they recruited a group of people who had panic attacks and a group of people who didn't have panic attacks. And both groups had to do intense physical exercise. And what they found is that only one person out of 35 who had panic attacks experienced a panic attack during exercise, caused by exercise. So the prevalence is actually quite low, only about 3% of the population. And what are the different causes of panic attacks during exercise? Well, according to one study, what they found is that people with panic disorder actually have higher heart rates, both at rest and during exercise, than people without panic disorder, which is interesting that poor cardiovascular conditioning is both a cause of and the solution to poor panic disorder. Another study, what they found was that people with panic attacks produce more lactic acid during exercise and during rest, which means that if you don't have panic attacks and you feel your muscles burning, somebody with panic attacks feels that burn more. And that's daunting. It can cause anxiety and it can increase the risk of panic attacks during exercise. Again, not very likely. Only about 3% of the population of the population who has anxiety has panic attacks, not the total population, but only 3% of the anxiety population has panic attacks during exercise. So it's not very prevalent, but it can still happen. Going back to the principle that people with panic attacks actually have lower aerobic capacity, in one study, researchers compared people with panic attacks to people without panic attacks, and they looked at their aerobic capacity, or something called their VO2 max. That stands for V, the volume, O2 is oxygen max, the maximal oxygen consumption per minute. That's measured in milliliters per kilogram per minute. And so the aerobic capacity of people with panic attacks was about 31 milliliters per kilogram per minute. The aerobic capacity of people without panic attacks, everything else was the same, was 37.6 milliliters per kilogram per minute. In other words, those with panic attacks have lower aerobic capacities by 21% compared to people without panic attacks. So what does that tell us? It's important to improve the aerobic capacity because that could be a causal factor in terms of causing panic attacks during exercise. In one study where researchers asked people with panic attacks to do aerobic exercise or cardio, they actually decreased their frequency of panic attacks. So it's both a cause of and the solution to panic attacks. Another strategy to improve panic attacks during exercise is simply distraction. If you're thinking about how hard your heart is beating or how hard you're breathing, etc., that's going to potentially trigger a panic attack in somebody who's prone to that. However, if you distract yourself with some kind of audiobook, some music, something on TV, talking to another person next to you, that could take your mind off of that. Another one is a proper warm-up and a proper cool-down. If panic attacks are correlated to a high heart rate, maybe it's not so much the extent of the rise, maybe it's the speed of the rise. In somebody who just gets in the gym and gets to work, maybe their heart rate will go from resting 70 beats per minute up to 130, 140, 150 in a matter of 1 minute. Maybe somebody with a panic attack needs to take longer to escalate it to that point. Maybe it's not the amount, maybe it's the speed. Likewise with a cool down. Somebody without a panic attack, they finish their last exercise, they can just go to the change room, get changed, go home. Somebody with a panic attack may need to actually implement a cool down of maybe 5 to 7 to 8 minutes to actually bring their pulse down from that 150, 160, or even 140 range down to, well, close to resting. It's not going to be at resting until the next day, but it's going to be close to resting. So bring it down to, let's say, under 90. So that's another potential strategy. Yet another strategy to minimize the risk of exercise-induced panic attacks is simply self-reflection. After an exercise session where you did not have a panic attack, simply ask yourself, and it's better if it's out loud, did it hurt and did I die? And I'm not being facetious here, you should actually ask, did I die? And it's even more powerful if you write it down on a piece of paper, because when you reflect on it, you see that this wasn't so bad. It takes away a lot of the power and a lot of the anxiety that's associated with exercise for somebody who does experience exercise-induced panic attacks. Another strategy is simply to hire a personal trainer where they can monitor your exercise intensity and exercise duration. And if you can't, don't want to, can afford to, that's another strategy, which is don't go to the gym and start doing the hardest thing you can think of. You should start with a lower intensity, lower duration you think you can handle. If you think you can do 90% intensity for an hour, well, start at 50% for 20 minutes. And work your way up from there. Just increase it by 2 to 5 minutes every week. Don't go into the gym and first thing you do ever is the hardest thing you can think of. Another strategy is to exercise in a comfortable environment. So before you ever start exercising, check out the gym or do this at home. But if you do want to go to a gym, check out the gym first before joining. Check out a number of gyms. See which one makes you feel the most comfortable. If you're uncomfortable being in a room full of people who look like they stepped off a cover model, well, go to a gym with ugly, fat people. Just kidding. Go to a gym where basically it doesn't feel intimidating, there's good circulation, and it's not intimidating to you. And the last strategy I'm going to recommend to you if you do suffer from exercise-induced panic attacks is notice what kind of exercise produces the panic attacks. Is it cardio or is it strength training? If strength training produces panic attacks, try cardio. If cardio produces panic attacks, try strength training. There you have it. I hope you like this video. My name is Igor. Click like and subscribe.